All right, we're getting to the fun stuff, I promise. So one thing that I want to just sort of preface before we start modeling a few things is you know, this is an interior space, and an interior space is subject to certain limitations in the rendering environment. So if you know, some of you curious minds have gone so far as to actually run a render so far, what you're going to realize is that, you know, if you put it on constant dome, it looks like that. Okay, because my spaces are open on the back side of my building, or where my exits are, that's what it looks like. So if you need to control any of your exterior lighting environment, that's something that needs to be done by modeling. We'll get there. But another thing is, if you switch it to physical sky, and you can't quite tell the difference here on this screen, the big one, but if you look down here, what you see here is the left side is kind of like a warmer yellow light, and the right side is like a softer blue light. Okay, and that's because of where my sun is and where the diffuse glow of the sky is hitting my model. So it's important to know that the exterior environment is actually affecting what you see. But I guess let me show you real quick and there it is. Boom. Okay. Oh, it didn't show. Oh, I need to put this on. It is on shaded rendered viewport. Oh, I don't have a base. That's right. Hang on. I just need to put a base ground plane on. There we go. Okay, so my model is facing north up here. Okay, so north is this way. So this is facing west. You guys realize that, right? And this entry is facing north. So the reason you're getting that warm glow is because the sun, when you measure where the sun's coming from, it's actually coming in from kind of the western side. So the warm sun in the late afternoon is bouncing through that space, okay? But because it's a physical sky, everything that's bouncing off of the environment on the northern side is reflecting that bluer light back into the space on the other side. Okay, you can use that to your advantage if you want. Okay, in my space, I do not, so I'm actually just going to block those off, but that's up to you, and you need to know it's there. Inside the space, we are going to have to add light, okay? And there are two primary ways to do that. You can add light through Rhino light families, like basically the lighting tool, or you can add light by creating materials and applying them to objects. Okay, we're going to start with like the training wheels, which is using the Rhino lights, which are actually pretty darn good. And we're just going to stick with kind of direct, like direct down lights and spot fill lights, like fill lights and stuff like that, just to begin. So anyway, let's go to hang on. How do I want to begin? All right. So what you guys are going to want to do is go to your toolbar and go to Show Toolbar and scroll down to where it says Lights, and you can toggle Lights on. While you're at it, you might as well just toggle on Light Tools as well. I don't really know if we're going to use that as much, but you know, throw it on there anyway. So I'm going to create another toolbar with this. Oops. And let's have at it. So the basics are this. For fills, you're going to use the point light, and for you know, accent lights and stuff, you're going to use the spotlights. That's your basics for now. Those are the only two I want you to use. So let's start off with a fill light. Where I'm going to place this fill light is right sort of in the middle of my space, right above this guy. It looks like this. It's just a little symbol. No matter where you scroll in or out of, that symbol, well, if it's visible at least, is always going to be the same size. Okay, so it's not scaling when you zoom in or out or anything like that. For how many of you is this repeat information? None. Excellent. All right. So anyway, the way that you control the fill light here is through the properties panel. in Rhino. So remember, these are Rhino objects. So go into Properties, and what you're going to find is that these tabs here will allow you to modify what the properties are of this object. It has Maxwell properties, light properties, material properties, and your typical object properties, which most of you are very familiar with by now. What we're going to do is use the light properties, and we're going to move the intensity to go very low. Okay, a fill light should be, almost invisible. It should be just enough to semi-illuminate the space. And I totally forget what the benchmark is for this, but let's start with something like 15, and we'll go up and down from there. Additionally, you can add color onto the light, so you can make it look like neon signs, or you can make it warmer or cooler light. Are you guys familiar with the difference between warm and cool light? Right. So you know how, maybe you don't, but like when LED lights first came out, the technology was kind of rudimentary, and all you could get were these like super bright blue lights, and it's just made your place feel like an alien spaceship. Well, the technology has increased, and now you can get what's called a warmer light, which has a lower Kelvin rating. So we're going to go with something that's a little bit on the gold spectrum, just barely on the gold spectrum. Actually, let's make it on the orange spectrum and bring it to something like that. Just has a a slightly amber tinge to it. All right, so you probably won't even really be able to notice that when it actually illuminates the space. But let's go up here, and so we're going to do just one of these for now, and you're going to find that it's going to take some tweaking. And the interesting thing about fill lights, and we'll talk about the game industry offline if you're interested, but fill lights kind of need to be super low, and there needs to be a lot of them. Okay, so I'll talk through the details of that, but let's do a quick test render, and then we'll get back to it. So camera. Where was that from? Anyway, all right, let's do a test render. Okay, so I'm only going to let this run for a little bit. The cool thing I think about fill lights is that you can actually control them fairly well. There are ways to turn them off. Let's see. Let me go back here real quick. I'm just forgetting where exactly. It's been a while since I've done that. Well, anyway, let's play around with it first, and don't worry about it being on there. I'll do another video on how to turn it off. But anyway, so this is how you illuminate the space. Notice something. Once I put a light in the space, what is different? What's that? There's no light coming in from the exterior. Okay, so what that tells you is you have to make some modifications in order to get the sunlight to play with the interior lights that you're putting in the space. So what did I change actually? I have it set to use sun physical. I might actually need to remind myself where that setting is, but anyway, yeah, you got to make some adjustments there on that one. So remember, once you put a light in the space, you can actually adjust its brightness. Well, not its brightness using ISO and shutter. What ISO and shutter does is it allows more light into the camera, okay? Or it allows, well, all right, so my understanding of ISO is how the light affects or changes the film, how it burns into the film, and then shutter speed is how long the shutter of the camera stays open, allowing more light to hit and alter the film. Okay, so those two kind of play, and they're sort of in balance with one another, but you'll have to use that to adjust your space in terms of how much light you want in that space. Okay, any questions so far? All right, I'm going to stop this video here. Oh, you know what? I am getting a little bit of light in the background there. Maybe it just bumped it back so far and this light's too intense. But anyway, so I'm going to move into a couple of things coming up next. I'm going to talk to you about how you can modify the lights, not just the ISO and shutter, after the rendering is done, which is super important. And then we'll figure out a little bit more about getting the sun to play with it a little better. if I can remember. Okay, any questions? All right.